This conference will now be recorded.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item number 1 on the agenda, consider adoption of the proposed agenda.
Mayor, I know that I reached out to you and reached out to the council about this item. I mean, as far as formalities of it, I don't know if you want to address that, like me to address it, just as an option of, it's the opportunity. I mean, we don't have to be as too formal if we don't want to be. I think the purpose of a lot of our discussions has been, that's kind of the time at the beginning of the meeting. If there is something that needs to be changed, whether it's taking something from the consent agenda or something needs to be removed, or, maybe something staff realizes we don't have enough info, something to come up and we ask that something gets deleted. So I kind of suggested a possibility there of, the mayor can ask if there's any of those things, and if not, then we move on. If there is, then we address them. But if you want to go, if we want to go through a formal process, we can do that. But I don't know that the sense I got from the council broadly was, well, we don't necessarily need to do a motion and then a second and an adoption if we just have that time, that process here to address the agenda. And Mayor, I'll leave it at that.
Right. I'm comfortable either way. So, thoughts or feelings? Okay.
And we can reframe it on future agenda.
Okay.
But,
yes,
so we just have it. But I mean, the purpose there is just, if there is something, this would be the time. It could come from staff, it could come from legal, it could come from council. That's something, an agenda item needs to be moved or anything, then we would address it at that point. So
okay.
That
and so then I'll just say, unless we have any suggestions of changes, we'll move forward.
There you go.
Okay. Item number 2 is requests or comments from the public. If there are any, please state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes. There being none, we'll move on to item 3, consent agenda. Again, if we have anyone on the council that would like an item removed from the consent agenda, please just state your question and we'll remove it and discuss it separately. Otherwise, we'll hear a motion to approve the consent agenda items.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Will the clerk please call roll?
Scott?
Yes.
Adams?
Yes.
Bishop?
Yes.
Malott?
Yes.
Schreiber?
Yes.
Item 4, consider resolution 2023-02, adopting city council agenda development policy, which is old business.
I will touch on this, and then the city attorney may have some other comments. But as you know, at our last meeting, there was general direction of the council to try to gather governing bodies' input and comments and processes. So I started off basically sending you kind of the very most recent original, and then some modifications, and then the discussions that we had at the last meeting, and took those 3 and made a version 4. Then asked the body if they had any comments to version 4 to send those to me. Received just a few minor comments, which we then incorporated, which is version 5, and which is that version tonight that we're referring to as option 1 with the addendum. The second thing that came up that was raised during that was, and I know several expressed it at the last meeting, can we go maybe to a more simplified process, which is kind of where we, maybe started. I think there was comments that, kind of, I'm going to say got too far in the weeds, and that they're a more simplified process. So you have a second option, same resolution number, second option, which fundamentally says, if you wish to add an item to the agenda, excluding an executive session, at least that's the way it's drafted, Right, because executive sessions are, again, you can't just go to those just for whatever, they're legislative. So if you want to add something to the agenda, it would then take a 4/5 votes of those present. That is all that, roughly that resolution says. So you kind of have two options. The first option is a more formal policy that we've talked about over the last several weeks, or one that's very simple at this point that simply says that if you want to amend the agenda, that's where the 4/5 vote of those present come into play.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion that we adopt option 2, resolution number 2023-02.
Second.
We have a
I don't
motion.
know if you have any, it's no comment. Okay. Does anybody have any comments? That was done. Okay.
One question. on-
Yes, sir.
and, Section 2, it's the new agenda. I want to make sure that I understand. Executive session can be called in certain situations according to the Kansas, what is it, the law 43:17 or 19?
I think it's that 75-43-19, and then there's a bunch of
And then-
subsections below
And
that.
then
But
the
yeah.
4/5 vote, is that the 5 council members or is that 6?
It's the council present is how we have it. So you have 5 council members plus the
Right.
mayor, but
And
however
there's-
many are present,
So if there's
triggers
4
for
present, is it a 3?
I
I hate to bring up.
3 or 4, I think would not, wouldn't.
It'd be, if there's only 4, it'd require unanimous. instead of
Yeah.
3.
Okay. thank you.
It's 4/5. I'd have to do the math, so.
That was
yes.
my only
Yeah.
question.
Yep.
Let's move on.
Okay. I will note that, and it's my fault, but we'll correct this. On the passed and approved, we had the 7th day of April, which was Friday when we sent it out. It'll be April 10th, but that's just a typographical error, and I think it's.
We've got a clean copy ready for
So-
signature.
So we're adopting it this night. Sorry.
We have a motion in a second. Will the clerk please call roll?
Scott,
Yes.
Adams,
Yes.
Bishop,
Yes.
Malott,
Yes.
Shriver.
Yes.
Item number 5, consider addendum number 1 related to construction management contract, Vogel Anderson.
Are you going to handle that item primarily? Okay.
Mayor and council members, this stems from some earlier discussion that we had. We touched on anyway at the last city council meeting. Essentially, what this item is concerning is related to the recently approved construction management contract with Vogel Anderson. That's kind of running in conjunction with our Riverfront Park redevelopment project. Now, the Riverfront Park redevelopment project is a little bit more down the line than some of our other facilities type projects, to the point where our contractors at Stantec have put together their design documents for it. What the design documents are they're pretty detailed plans as far as infrastructure, where things would go based on the input that the CPPS board has given, based on the input that we've gotten from some of the community members. The phase 1 for that is included in your packet as an attachment to the memo. Essentially, the phase 1 park design would be restrooms, the permanent shelter, the plaza adjacent, the new concrete surfaces essentially to support the restroom and the shelter, utility extensions, redevelopment of the parking lot, the new walks, which would be right south of the parking lot. So none of the additions to the boardwalk or additional trails to the east, pole lights and bollards along some of the trails, a new permanent playground, some updated signage, and then it does have a consideration for if there is some. So what the CPPS board will be considering at its next meeting is looking at a proposal from Stantec to essentially a cost proposal to go in and redesign, and I should say redesign is a little bit of a misnomer, but I guess undesign some of the access of the 9th to the 9th Street portion of Riverfront, just so we can make sure that if there are some cost savings. Currently, the project is couched as we would realign the entrance of Riverfront Park to line up with Wood End Road. There's some thought that if we didn't do that there might be some cost savings in there. Now, all these pieces kind of go together. So in order for Stantec to put together the design documents for that piece of it, there would be some additional costs for that. So the CPBS board is going to consider that piece of it And if they, make a recommendation one way or the other, it would eventually make its way to the city council. But essentially, the phase one improvements as they are couched are included in that agenda memo. So the next piece of that would be for our construction managers at Vogel Anderson, start putting together the pre-construction work for it. And so while we've got good design elements and we've got, we know where utilities need to go, we know where they're at now to support concept as it is now, what the pre-construction costs would cover are essentially getting it to that next step. So we've got an actual package we can go out for bid and eventual construction. So that'll help us with actually putting some firm numbers as it relates to budget for the project. Some of the numbers that Stantec developed were pretty, I'll call them preliminary. They're a couple of years old, and the concept for the park has been narrowed down since then. There was a lot of elements in there that aren't in the final version. So the original estimates that Stantec put together are really for they're very, I'll call them, they're swag, essentially. They're a real 30,000 foot view, and they're for a much broader project where we got a lot more detail as CPPS started to work on it. But the cost for this piece of it, as it relates to the Vogel Anderson piece of it, comes to $5,000, which would be worked into the existing contract as an addendum to be paid for using special sales tax funds. So that's the recommendation from staff, is to move forward with that addendum at that price point, paid for using special sales tax funds.
Could you tell me what bollards are on number 7?
Bollards they're like light pole or different kind of poles and trail markers. So you can have light bollards. So the thought is, part of it is we want to have lights for the trail when it gets dark, but we don't want light to be, since it's so close to a residential neighborhood, you can put lights in those bollards that just light the trail, like have nodes of lights on the trail and not kind of go out and interrupt people in the nighttime.
They're this tall.
Oh, you're
Yeah, they're just short lights.
Yeah.
okay.
You'll see that word used for sometimes safeties, like you have bollards around where you don't want people to drive through.
That's what I
parking.
kind of was
Now,
thinking.
We've got those right now.
They look kind of like that, but they're just a light. They're a ground type light, and they're spaced out to provide trail lighting, pretty typical.
And so how long would this CM report be good for? Because right now we have some figures from Stantec, but they're a year and a half or so old. So would we have to move on this project much sooner for the numbers to still be usable? Or if we say, hey, we want to wait until we get through phase 1 of the municipal buildings to make sure there's money to cover phase 1 of the parks, are we gonna have to send it back to Vogel Anderson to redo the numbers?
Well, as long as the design elements included in the design documents are largely unchanged, and they may change a little bit depending on the recommendation from CPPS board related to the access, but as long as the design pieces of it stay the same, then those are going to be the design pieces of it, whenever we do turn it over to Vogel Anderson to actually put those numbers together. Now, the timing element comes into play when, if we go to Vogel Anderson to put these numbers together, the intention would be at that point, we're in a point where we're ready for construction. So if we put numbers together and then, to your point, wait 18 months or so, there's a lot of different inflationary costs. So.
I think the numbers are pretty, again, it's a small portion. The scope of it is really what we just want to do. So example, if this is a project as a priority as we get going, and we want to couple some or all of this into, say, a bond program. Again, we just have some of that foundational information there. We can build some cost, estimators in there, for the future. I mean, obviously, like anything, the farther you get away from the time it was done, they become more, difficult. But what they're trying to do is what would it take to construct it, say within the next 12 months, just as a time frame. If we were going to do this next 6 to 12 months, this is what we think those costs are. If we think it's going to go out 24 months, and we'd say, hey, you need to build in a 6% inflationary or 4 or 10 or whatever. But really, it's kind of focused on I'd say kind of 6 to 12 month time frame for, you could go tomorrow and say, build that, and those numbers should be good. Because again, we're far from a time where we're saying turn them loose and go build it. And so at some point, whatever method we use to do the park, there'll be either a guaranteed maximum price, or you'll go out to bid and you'll have, a firm bid, or it just depends on what methods used. But I think it gives us the foundation to be able to have really some of the discussions about cost and priorities and how does this pair up to like roads. Roads are fairly easy because you can somewhat say, okay, I got this many linear feet of road, and concrete's concrete and asphalt's asphalt, and the big changes there generally is cut fills and putting in storm. Right, that's the big cost. But I mean, 32 feet wide street, curb to curb, I could probably give you an estimate within 5 or 10% because I just need to know what the asphalt price is, the concrete price, and try to get in a calculator. This stuff's a little, more variables, I guess.
Sure.
So.
And I'm a big supporter of improving our parks. I think that's really a great asset to our community. I just wanted to make sure, since we have a lot of big things coming up, that we weren't spending money that we might need
Sure.
for other projects that are already down the pike. And then I just wanted to confirm we're not approving phase 1 since we don't have numbers attached to this. So
Right.
if we were to say later, if we get the numbers back in and we say, hey, we want to pull the electric vehicle charging station, for
Right.
example,
Sure.
it won't be inconvenience or anything like that to
Yeah, I mean, I
deal
think
with
as long as
that.
we don't change, I think as Zach's, I mean, if we change and say you could say we're going to add one, delete one, or delete them. That's probably not big. If you say, well, we're going to build a 20 space parking lot. Now we're going to build a 40 space parking lot, or we're going to move significant changes, then you're kind of somewhat back to a starting point. But if you say, hey, we looked at this, you came up, told us that this phase is, and I'm just throwing a number out, right, that this phase is $1 million, but we really only have $700,000 we want to spend on this phase. What do we do to get to that price point? But even to get to that discussion, we have to have somebody that could, really put some firm numbers to this. Right.
Madam
That's
Mayor,
really the-
I make a motion, we approve addendum number 1 for the Riverfront Park pre-construction services. Addendum to the management contract with Fogel Anderson in the amount not to exceed $5,000.
We have a motion and a second. Will the clerk please call roll?
Scott,
Yes.
Adams,
Yes.
Bishop,
Yes.
Malat,
Yes.
Shriver.
Yes.
Okay. City manager report. Mike,
I
did you
guess
have
we
any?
didn't have any written report in this one, or did I just miss it?
Yeah, there's
Okay.
one in
Yeah,
there.
there is.
I guess my.
It's one
didn't have-
line.
Okay, that's fine.
You know
Well,
what's going on.
I'm going to add a few quick items. Quote, silent crossing project. I've been back in contact with the county. Again, they said the engineer was going to go out there. The engineer went out there and said there were some things that need to be corrected. I'm like, what needs to be corrected? What are we doing to get there? So I don't have a response yet, but I haven't forgot it. I think during some of our discussions last meeting, we talked about K32 and KDOT, reached out to the area engineer. I think at first when I sent him a message, he thought we were like, well, we need you to go do all these things. They're like a lot of people, they're very short staffed at the moment. I said, well, our purpose here isn't to try to load stuff up on you or us, but yeah, I'd like to get together and just talk about, hey, if we want to go out there and mow the grass 3 times this year, what do we need to do? Tell us, is there what forms or whatever. So I hopefully we'll get that set up pretty soon, but I did reach out to them, follow up. Evergy, I know we had, they came before us for a variance. We talked about having a workshop with them at some later date. I spoke to, I'm not sure what his exact title is, but a gentleman named Scott Jones, who's kind of their government relations person for our region. Said, well, what are you doing related to building a substation or just where we're at? So long story short of those conversation is they see building the substation 2 to 3 years off, and that they're currently building or planning to build a distribution line starting at their substation on 166th Street and coming east to 110th, basically. So I don't know what the route is, but it's about 6 miles. And at this point, they're not building any distribution between the Edwardsville substation and Undertown. So that's it. Not that they're not going to do it, they just have that one on hold. So that's what I know there. And then 98th Street, just to give you a little, the part we call phase one, the part that's funded, ready, pretty much ready to go. We had a little bit of a last minute change because of concrete pricing. I guess has gone up a lot for stabilization. And so KDOT recommended to move to an AB3 base, which is a rock type base. We use them both. But they had to go, so our engineers had to go back through and recalculate all the estimates and numbers and things. And so we hope to have that back to KDOT here this week. The downside is KDOT is pretty far behind on its bid letting schedule. So we don't know what that will be at this point, but it could be September before they let this project. But I'll know more once they get the final PS&E plans and plug it in their schedule. We told them we're ready to go and want to get moving. But those are just 4 updates beyond what, I'm not sure what else we had there. So happy to answer questions later if you need it.
Zach, did you have anything to say?
I did have a quick response. I just wanted to follow up on a question Councilmember Adams had asked a couple of meetings ago about, he had specifically asked if we could include the attendance figures for folks who are watching online. I mean, it's easy enough to report on the number of people who are watching live online. We don't really have that much. It's usually, maybe 2. I mean, 2 or 3, I think is around, when we have anybody at all, it's around 2 or 3, and usually 2 or 1. The reason that, or one of the reasons that that's not really reported on is because a lot of times they're not putting out a name. They might just be an email address, or it might just be blank. Might be, if they're calling in, it might be their phone number. So obviously we don't want to give that information out. Now we do have a lot of folks, probably the real value in doing the recording service is that we do put it on YouTube and people are able to follow up with it kind of on their own time. We do average somewhere between 25 and 36 views of those meetings after the fact. Now, I couldn't say for sure who is exactly watching those after the fact, but people are watching them to a point. So that's really where the value in the recording piece of it is. But I did just want to follow up on Councilmember Adams' question about who's actually, watching live online.
Thank you.
Things like that. That's all I had. Thank you.
While you're up there, Zach, would you mind, I know that you guys posted about the citywide yard sale coming up, but then also the cleanup day.
Yep, the
dumpsters
cleanup day will
coming
be the same third Saturday. That's the 21st, I want to say, third Saturday in May, 22nd maybe? 20th, okay. Yeah, I'm getting all the details from Casey Disposal and that kind of layout ready. Once I get all that, which should be tomorrow, then we'll let folks know about that date as well.
Wonderful. And are we going to have the one of the thrift stores there?
Reached out to Adelante again to see if they can have their truck out. They've been there the last couple of years, and if they can't, find somebody else.
Perfect. Thank you. Chief Mathies. Chief Whittam.
Yes, ma'am. As you were briefed by the city manager, smoke detectors save lives. We had a incident where there was no smoke detector found. The big thing is we remind citizens that there are free battery-powered smoke detectors that we can come install, and the same with hardwired smoke detectors for newer built homes are needed. We absorb part of that through grants through Kansas State Fire Marshal's office, and just buying packs. We have purchased before Home Depot at the Shriver Road. We changed out 4 in a neighbor's home last year. Part of the big push that we're going to start putting out here in the next 2 weeks is our records management system allows through the community connections through our council on the board to put the request in, so it's not having to go through the city servers through email anymore. Go directly to us through the RMS. We can keep track of better record keeping of how many batteries we've issued out, how many smoke detectors we've replaced. And the same is going to be held true over the next couple of weeks. So it's been most days off on the first due. We'll be able to migrate the online permit application process through the same RMS system. So instead of having to email the command staff that the police chief set up to us, we have to find somebody that's there. The RMS system will trigger the command staff on the phone, so it should reduce the time that people wait for permits from hours down to minutes. And then we go through in the morning if there's a red flag day or whatever, we will be able to put in. If we're not issuing permits that day, if somebody triggers one to put in, it'll immediately fire back to do bad burning operations for that day. When we bought the RMS system, we had some of this work bought in there. We've slowly integrated part of it to make sure we capture all the data we want. These are the last two phases that we have with this system, so we're going to try to launch them on 1 May, but we're going to hit some of the high points on smoke detectors and options that are built for that to make it easier for the citizens. So that would change the web page, launch it to the community connect page where it would give them the option. They have to just create the account, they go in, takes them 5 minutes, bam, they have the results. So one spits the phone and says yes or no. We also have about 75 dead snags or dead trees along the inner walking trail at the park. You come right in and you start like this off one, going down. When we're talking within close proximity, within 5 feet of the edge of the trail that are going to probably come down sooner or later. We just don't want them to fall down on somebody's head when they're walking. It's a little windy day. We're going to try to get some time out there to park them and then get them dropped on our side, get them pulled into the inside, and we'll help the public works government command needs us to haul it all out. Those are some of the biggest threats we found, some of our burning, to try to help prevent some of the irrigation and make the trails a little bit safer.
Thank you for doing that. I know a lot of people really appreciate all your work.
Chief, do we have a policy in place or anything to do with, the smoke detectors that you guys are installing? That's great. I'm glad that you're doing that. But what if somebody has either one of ours or one of theirs that needs the batteries? Can they call and get the batteries replaced through your system as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, like I said, last year we issued out about 275 batteries just to residents of the trailer park alone. 5 years ago, we had a big push to the American Red Cross for anybody to use batteries as well. So we just kind of tagged them. So this whole system, whether it's a smoke detector battery, it's chirping on what it is, can you tell me when the expiration date of it is? The only things that we've not got funded yet has been carbon monoxide detectors. And that's going to be one of the big pushes, the state fire marshal's office is trying to get some granting on that. But like I said, if you think from a smoke detector question, I need the batteries, I need the units.
Right.
Just give us a call because we have been in a couple of national publications over what we call our smoke detector bags, husky work bags, carry batteries, portable drills, and detector heads right in there in the truck. So even if we're on a medical call, we discover something wrong, we can make a replacement right in there and we have it.
That's perfect. Well, thank you guys again for doing that. Zach, do we have that information on how our citizens can log in or call or wherever they need to go to do that?
I just got the answer back on first Tuesday tomorrow, and that's what I was talking to Zach.
Okay.
This week. He's kind of advertising the past on social media to go to the Direct Connect.
Perfect.
Community Connect, identifies if you have pets, invalids, or anything else. So when the call comes in, it directly populates on our screens, our MDTs, and trucks. Like I said, we're going to work to clear some of that off the city web page, just going to link it to that launch page.
Perfect.
But like I said, I didn't get a chance to tell Zach a lot about it. I just finally got answers done in about 5 minutes, on some of the final stuff we were looking at.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Thank you
we'll be
guys.
sure to get it out there whenever it's all ready to go.
Perfect. Thank you guys for that.
CE, did you have anything for us today? And we missed Mr. Nye. Did you have anything for us today?
We may need an executive session in either next time or the time after regarding litigation, potential litigation. So I don't know, just include that on an agenda or what, but FYI.
I would anticipate at our next meeting.
Okay, something to look forward to.
No, yeah. It's keep everybody up to,
Okay.
there's nothing like serious right tomorrow. I just want to keep everybody up to date on
I'll
some
lose
items.
sleep
So.
till then. Councilman Adams, did you have anything for us today?
I have nothing.
Councilman Bishop?
Yeah, I want to report on the fire department. Everybody knows we had a fatality fire next door to me, or down the road actually. But I was there and I watched our personnel work. And with the amount of training that they have, they did a fantastic job. I mean, there was nothing left of the house. It was already burned in. I mean, fell in on itself. But the way they handled themselves in a fatality, probably their first fatality fire ever, the way they handled themselves was very professional. What I was shocked to see was how young our department is. I think that being a retired fireman, longevity is the best way to learn. And we need to keep some older people around. I'm not talking guys who are getting ready to retire. I'm talking guys who got 10, 15 years on the job, because somebody's got to teach these new kids something. So I think we need to look into the next budget of a way of either incentivizing pay or something else to keep older people there. You know, I'm not, like I said, I'm not talking about guys like me. I'm talking about, in their 30s, 40s, because I can remember passing down all my knowledge from them guys, but they did a really good job. Very professional. I mean, fatality fire is tough, and I thought they did a fantastic job. So, thanks. That's it.
Thank you. Councilman Millette?
Mike already answered 3 or 4 that I was going to come up with, which was the silent crossings, number 1, still priority 1 to me. They're ridiculously loud and annoying. Looking forward to some kind of something from the county on getting this thing going. KDOT, I had that on my list to ask you about. You're on top of it. You can't retire because you're already ahead of everybody. I was going to mention on the purchase of the property, I don't know the address, but on the northeast corner there of 4th Street and the railroad tracks. The CPPS board, I think, probably should be notified of the purchase of that property and maybe what some of the plans that we have discussed informally about what we expect to do with that property. I think maybe they could get on top of that and kind of start looking at it, if that makes any kind of sense to anybody. I don't want to see the building just torn down and then just have grass there all of a sudden. I'd like to have something progressive put in there. And I'll go ahead and throw it out right now in front of the body that's here. I'm thinking along the lines of a visitation type center, maybe gazebo kind of a thing, maybe 4 or 5 parking places, and just a community spot. And if you have out of town visitors that come in and don't really know where to find you or anything, it's a meeting spot that you could do. But that's kind of what my thoughts are on it. That's my personal thoughts on it. But I think that as well as the CPPS board works, I think they could probably come up with some pretty good ideas on that. And that probably should be included in the budgeting process as well this year. I was going to ask about interviews for finance director. Any kind of progress on that?
We've had 2 and we have some additional ones scheduled.
And I keep saying with that budget process
Right.
coming up, I think that's pretty much high priority list.
It is. Yeah.
The last thing I had on here was, Mike, you had sent us an email about the Kansas Senate House Bill 271 concerning idling trains, blocking intersections and crossings. I think we should fully support that. And I think as a community, as a city council, we should send a letter and give it 100% support on that.
Okay.
So, and it's not only our crossings, but even the Shawnee Rock up here where they'll spark cars across there in the middle of rush hour traffic. They'll start moving trains around at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. It's ridiculous that the railroad can get away with doing that. I think that needs to stop. I think they should do that at midnight. They ought to have flaggers out there. They should have signs saying when they're going to do it or something. That's my personal opinion of it, but that's what I had there. And other than that, you covered everything. Thank you for our fire department for being so professional.
If I can respond to 2 things. So the Senate Bill 271, why they kind of addressed it as, crossing, dealing with trains parked on crossings. I did reach out to Spencer Duncan, who is effectively the lobbyist for the league on the bill just to get some update. So it did pass through the Senate. It's sitting in the House. As you know, they're in recess right now. So because it made it to the House and went to committee, it could come back in some light form. It may not. Really, apparently over time, the courts have ruled that as far as being able to cite trains that are stopped, that's not, that neither we, the state, whoever has the power, that's basically a federal power. But what the bill was partly what it's intended to do was, number one, that it limited the length of trains to 8,500 feet, and that when it was stopped, that it would be a minimum, I think, 250 or 300 feet from the crossing, so as to not, so you could see around it. So it wouldn't necessarily completely prevent that bill of a train stopping and closing the three crossings simultaneously. It's still under basically the Federal Railroad Administration's authority, but it was really geared towards as trains, we have fewer trains today, but the length of the trains are longer, right? So even if they're moving, even at a slow speed, because of their length, they go on. So of course the railroad's position somewhat is, well, that's the authority of the Federal Railroad Administration. It's not the authority of the state of Kansas, and therefore, they're going to be opposed to it. That's a quick summary of it, but that's not to say that we shouldn't still support it, and we can certainly draft a letter. Like I say, it's in I think the House Transportation Committee at this point. The other item is relative to the home, that property that you were talking about. Did talk to the, I guess, former owner, and he intends to have everything out of the house here certainly by the end of this month. I think actually the contract, the 30 days was around the 15th, but he came in. He's going to be at a out of town professional function he has to go to for licensing, and so it may be a week after that. And that's, if it's going to be long term, we have a contractual option to impose. I mean, if it's a week more, I don't know that it's the dollars and cents and amount of work would make sense. But he's got most everything out of there. He actually came in and said, hey, there's some other things in there, furnishings and things like that. Do you want any of it? And my position, if it's inside the four walls, we don't have an interest in it. So I guess if you want a piece of furniture, you can certainly go up there and speak to him, but I don't think the city has any intentions of trying to salvage anything out of the building.
I guess one reason I brought that up is because I think probably a lot of the residents of the city aren't aware that we purchased that property.
Sure.
And that there was some internal planning on that.
Right.
And any input from the public would be appreciated on that, because I think there's some really pretty good ideas. People that would come up with some pretty good ideas for that. So I think
I want to give you an update on where it was at. He literally stopped by today and we spoke.
And then I did have one other thing, and I mentioned to you the other day, but I'll put it on record, is I think we need to get some keep your dogs on a leash signs at City Park.
Right.
Had a lady that was a little intimidated by some big dogs the other day. Nothing happened, but it could have. Thank you. That's all for me.
Councilman Scott?
We have a few of the LED lights, the new ones there on 110th Street. I think there's 3 total that are out. That should have came with some kind of a warranty for a year.
Are you talking at the far north end up there?
Yeah, the new on the roundabout area, and then south.
South, okay, because I was going to say there's some lights north of there that have been out, that they have some wiring issues that weren't part of that, but we did replace a few weeks ago, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking about the new ones with our new poles and the LEDs, and it seems like I think they each have a daylight sensor on them or something, because they're one's out and one's not, but I don't know, that could be it.
We'll take it. Well,
And who would change that? I mean, once they become ours, do we have anybody that does that, or?
Likely we would use like Total Electric, or Black and Beach or one of the third-party vendors to do that.
Do we have a contract with somebody yet?
We utilized, well, we used both of them. I don't know who did the work the other day, CE. It was another company that, I think they were the ones that installed them. And right. So we do a lot of, I mean, Total Electric does a lot of our work because they're licensed signal folks as well.
Yeah.
So, but those two companies do a lot of the work in the
Okay.
region. So we have basically on-call kind of contracts.
Okay,
So,
perfect.
but we'll follow up on it.
Yeah, because those should still be in warranty.
They should be. And we had a breaker in it. So if it's done the same ones again, then there's probably a larger issue that needs to be addressed, but we'll follow up on that.
And thank you for that. And then all the utilities that are being located here on 4th Street and Call Drive, what's going on there?
I'm not sure I know. Are you aware?
A culvert? Okay.
They haven't advised, replacing that culvert would be a significant project that would impact K-30.
You're talking about the one that's under Call Drive? Isn't that more of it's not a culvert, it's a concrete tube, isn't it? Yeah.
They haven't advised us of that, but yeah,
We probably need to stay on top of that and find out exactly what's going on.
I'll follow that up when I'm talking to KDOT.
Perfect. And then our unified government worker, was it a health worker that we had that was in our office once a week or once every 2 weeks, or where are we at with that, or how's that going or gone, or was it not good, or did we have a good rapport with our citizens and need for that?
She's had office hours twice a week, and then as part of that, and then kind of around that, she does or had been doing some canvassing around the area, just letting folks know that she was here. And I know she had 3 or 4 clients over the last couple of months. I've not gotten an official report back from the health department, but they would be wrapping up here in the next couple of weeks that engagement with the city. So again, they actually paid the city for use of the facilities and signage and everything like that. So none of this was at any direct cost that affected the city's funds. But from what I can tell, I mean, again, not having gotten the official kind of closeout report from, and it wasn't the health department, it was the Wyandotte County Health Council,
Okay.
who does work with the health department. But I think their intention is to kind of give us a final report whenever their engagement is over, which again should be coming up here pretty quick, actually.
Okay.
But we've referred, people have come into our office with different questions, and we were able to refer them to that individual. We know that they've got some clients on their own, the exact number, which I couldn't say for sure, but from what it seems, from my vantage point, she seems to have some clients and given some people some assistance, which is what the program is for.
It'd be nice to hear the final report on how it worked or didn't work, or how many people did it actually help. You know, something, if we can look at something in the future, if it was beneficial.
Oh yeah, once
citizens.
once I share their results with staff, we'll be sure to share that with council.
Perfect. That's all I got.
Councilman Shriver?
Well, the disadvantage being last, everything's kind of taken, but no, it's okay. I don't know where to start. So with all of the activities, all of the information that's shared tonight, back to my thing, or sign for Edwardsville, to share information, to post news, to post events, to whatever the case may be. I know that's maybe another discussion, but almost wondering, I know I've talked about social media and our website, Facebook, this and that, and we could all guess out of the 4,600 people live in Edwardsville, maybe half, I don't know if that's a big number, see that or have access to that. What's the best way to get this news out to everybody? A mailer, maybe. I know that, but a lot of information we can put in that mailer. And first and foremost, the smoke detectors. People have got to realize this. One fatality is one fatality too much. So maybe something along the lines with all our May events, the garage sale, the cleanup day. I don't know, if something within the next week or so could go out, just naming a lot of, did you know this? Here's some upcoming events, just something.
Mhm. We tend to do a physical mailer like once a quarter. I think the last one we
Correct.
did was at the end or beginning of February or so, so sometime in the middle of the quarter. So we will have one coming out sometime middle of May, just to give people an update on what's going on at that time and just to set it up at a regular clip.
Right, because I know you're fantastic with the hot shot, but the whole town,
Right. Mhm.
all of Edwardsville doesn't
Right.
see that.
Try to cast as wide a net as we can to get the
Right,
news
right.
out. Mhm.
But the garage sale is a big deal.
Mhm.
I saw some of our neighbors taking a truckload of stuff to the dump, and it's like, I think it was the next day. I said, what were you doing? We got a cleanup day coming up. So
Right.
people forget, but
Mhm.
Anyway,
We might be able to, maybe a good opportunity relative to the smoke detectors, et cetera, that, and appreciate the fire department, the help they give us on that day. But maybe there's something we can hand out, as cars come in, something like that. Or
anything.
Maybe the fire, maybe we could have somebody at the fire
Right,
there that
right.
just said, do you need I don't know that handing them out there because then they end up not getting installed. We want to be able to make sure
No.
they get installed, but maybe it's another opportunity to connect like at some event like that.
Any kind of advertising. And on the cleanup day, will there be electronic waste disposal as well? Is that?
I've reached out to Unicor. I've not heard. So Unicor is a facility that they operate at Leavenworth, the state prison. And I've reached out to them to usually they do. It's just we have to let them know when we're going to come pick up their big palletized boxes and let them know when we're going to drop them off. So
Those
that's
are usually filled up.
those are those are usually filled up pretty quickly. So that's the intention. That and scrap metal.
Oh, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
One thing that I wanted to mention that I thought might be good since it's springtime and we're talking about spring cleaning and just beautification in the city is potentially starting like a yard of the month type of program, but maybe a seasonal. So maybe a yard of like spring and summer and then fall and winter. And of course you could do like Christmas lights in the winter, Halloween decorations in the fall. But I just thought that might be just kind of a community builder, might be a good thing to bring to the CPPS board. They might be excited about it, but something that we could just kind of promote the community and community engagement in that matter, but also motivating people to clean it up a bit and make the yards nice. I think people would have fun with it. There is an event coming up put on by, let's see, it's going to be at the Fuel House Kentucky Derby Party. It's by the Rotary Club, but all the funds go to benefit Von Trent. And Von Trent is a local non-for-profit that helps folks with groceries and also utilities if they're behind or struggling with making their utility bill payments. And so that event's coming up here in May. And Zach, I don't know if maybe we could post something about that on the Facebook site, but I just thought it might be good to get the news out. It'd be a fun thing for folks to do here in the community, but also benefits people here in the community as well. Oh, last thing I've got is we were talking about folks being up on the north end working on lighting or different things. If we're reaching out to those guys, might we mention to them, please don't park on our new sidewalks? I can't tell you how many times I drive by and poor Zach gets the text from me, hey, somebody's on our sidewalk again, but they're not a public street and it's going to tear them up pretty quickly. So hopefully we don't need signs for that. I would think it was, the road's wide enough, just put on your hazard lights, but for sure if we're engaging folks to come out there, might be worth a mention. Hey guys, don't park on the sidewalk.
Other places to park is there.
Yep. Thanks so much. Have a good night.
Wow.
Have a good
Didn't your money tonight.
What do we do now?